Greetings, travelers from distant lands. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Calvian Dorelis, court bard and keeper of the memories of Aurathys, the realm of eternal light. Here, in this tavern where the golden glow dances with the clinking of cups, it is I who weave the threads of tales of past glories, present heroes, and perhaps of a future yet to come. With my voice, I breathe life into forgotten secrets and adventures that defy the passage of time. Today, my friends, I invite you to journey with me through the echoes of eternity. A grand tale awaits, filled with mysteries, courage, and astonishing revelations. The journey of Callan in his quest for the lost heir. Settle in, grab something to drink and eat, and let the magic of these words guide your imagination. The adventure is about to begin. Aurathys, the kingdom of eternal light, was a place where the sun seemed to shine forever. From the towering spires of its holy temples to the endless golden fields, everything in Aurathys was bathed in a heavenly glow. It was a world where light meant more than just power. It symbolized wisdom, order, and the promise of a bright future. In Aurathys, few were as respected as the librarians of the Great Solar Archive, a place of unmatched knowledge. These guardians of wisdom dedicated their lives to preserving the secrets of generations, collecting manuscripts, diaries, and relics that told the story of the kingdom. In this solemn place, you'd find Callan, a young apprentice, full of curiosity and a thirst for adventure. Callan wasn't like the other apprentices. While most were happy with a quiet life of books and status, he was drawn to the unknown. His mentor, the old and mysterious Master Altar, often scolded him for his curiosity. Altar was a man of few words, but his gaze held a weight that Callan couldn't quite understand. Despite the scoldings, the apprentice would spend hours exploring the darkest corners of the archive, where old and forgotten documents lay like shadows of the past. It was during one of these adventures that Callan found the diary. It was a small, seemingly insignificant book with a worn leather cover and pages that looked like they'd crumble at the slightest touch. There was something special about it, like time itself had decided to preserve it. When Callan opened it, his hands were shaking with excitement. The first few pages were just random notes, but then things got interesting. The diary talked about a lost family, a family that used to be super important in Aurathys. It was full of names, events, and crazy conspiracies. One name stood out: House Alteran, a dynasty that had vanished from the history books. According to the diary, they hadn't just disappeared, they had been betrayed. Callan's heart was racing. He knew this wasn't just any old book. It was a secret that could shake the whole kingdom. But why was it hidden? And more importantly, who wanted to keep it a secret? Master Altar seemed more cautious than ever when Callan told him about the diary. Without saying much, Altar just told him to be careful. But it was too late for Callan. He knew this was just the beginning of something big. That night, as the kingdom slept under the constant glow of Aurathys, Callan couldn't sleep. He was going over the diary, page by page, trying to connect the dots. There were old maps, lost cities, and allies who might still be out there. It was clear. He had to follow the clues. The next day, Callan made up his mind. He was leaving the great solar archive and going on an adventure that would test his courage and force him to face truths he never imagined. Before he left, he wrote a note to Master Altar, thanking him for everything and apologizing for leaving so suddenly. Kayla knew it could be dangerous, but he also felt it was his duty to find out the truth. With the diary in hand and a simple backpack full of maps, scrolls, and a few supplies, Kalen set off into the unknown. His journey would take him through breathtaking landscapes, from towering golden mountains to valleys filled with crystal-clear forests. Every step brought him closer to the truth, but also deeper into a world of secrets and danger. As the sun began to set, he reached the first city mentioned in the diary, Lysanth, known for its ebony towers that stood out against the eternal glow of Aurathys. The city was beautiful, but it also had a mysterious vibe. It was like the secrets of the past were still whispering in its winding streets. Kayla knew this was just the first stop on his journey. As he walked through the streets, he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Little did he know, the shadows of the past were watching his every move. Lysanth was a place of contrasts, where grand architecture hid dark secrets. The ebony towers shone under the eternal sky of Aurathys, but the shadows of the narrow streets seemed to whisper tales of conspiracy. Kalen started his search in the bustling markets, where voices overlapped in a chaotic mix of bargaining and rumors. He was looking for information about the names and places mentioned in the diary, but he knew he had to be careful. The walls in Lysanth had ears. In the heart of the city, Kalen found the Forgotten Light Tavern, a place known for attracting travelers and merchants from all over Aurathys. There, he hoped to find someone who could help him decipher the maps and clues. Sitting in a dimly lit corner, he started observing the patrons, looking for someone he could trust. And then he saw her, a woman with silver hair, wearing a dark blue cloak embroidered with symbols Kalen didn't recognize, stood out from the crowd. She had this magnetic presence, and her deep blue eyes seemed to see right through you. Without hesitation, Kalen approached her and explained his situation, leaving out the juiciest details. She introduced herself as Liara, an explorer with a deep knowledge of Aurathys' forgotten lands. Liara studied the diary carefully, furrowing her brow as she examined the maps. These markings point to an ancient place, a lost sanctuary in the Aryan Mountains, she said, pointing to a desolate area on the map. But getting there won't be easy. The mountains are guarded by more than just treacherous terrain. There are rumors of creatures and guardians protecting its secrets. A chill ran down Kalen's spine, but he was also excited. He knew this was the next step in his journey. Liara, intrigued by the young man's courage and determination, offered to join him. She had the knowledge they needed, and she was skilled at handling the dangers of the wild. As they planned their departure, Kalen noticed someone watching them. A hooded figure, sitting at the other end of the tavern, seemed overly interested in their conversation. When the stranger realized Kalen had noticed him, he stood up abruptly and hurried out. Something was wrong, and Kalen knew they needed to leave before dawn. Their journey to the Aryan Mountains began before the sun reached its highest point in the eternal sky. Kalen and Liara took the less-traveled roads to avoid unwanted attention. The path was treacherous, surrounded by dense forests and ruins of ancient civilizations. The landscape seemed to whisper long-forgotten secrets, and the tension in the air grew with every step. As they traveled, Liara shared more about the Aryan Mountains. They were surrounded by legends, from stories of guardian spirits to tales of treasures hidden by ancient kings. Kaelin listened intently, trying to separate fact from fiction. But there was something he couldn't deny, the feeling that they were being followed. On the third night, while they were setting up camp near a crystal-clear river, Liara noticed movement in the trees. Without hesitation, she alerted Kaelin, and they both fell silent, trying to identify the threat. And then 3 figures emerged from the shadows, their silhouettes cloaked in darkness. The intruders didn't say a word. They just charged, weapons drawn, towards Kaelin and Liara. Without a second thought, Liara pulled 2 short blades from her waist, moving with deadly grace. Kaelin, though inexperienced in combat, instinctively grabbed a shepherd's staff he'd been using for the hike. The 3 attackers were skilled, their movements synchronized, and their faces hidden by dark cloaks. It was clear they weren't just random bandits. Between attacks, Liara shouted to Kaelin, "Protect the diary." They're after it. With a quick glance, he realized one of the men was focused on the backpack containing the precious object. Kaelin barely had time to react, but something inside him awoke. Maybe it was his survival instinct or the weight of his mission. While Liara faced 2 of the attackers with quick and precise movements, the third advanced towards Kaelin with a long blade and a cold look. Kaelin gripped the staff tightly, blocking the initial attack and backing up as he tried to find his balance. Kaelin, focus on his movements, not the fear. Liara shouted between strikes. The sound of blades clashing echoed through the silent night. Liara moved like lightning, each strike delivered with surgical precision. Kaelin, on the other hand, struggled to stay on his feet amidst the chaos, holding the staff with both hands and using it awkwardly to block the attacks. His heart pounded, adrenaline coursing through his veins as he desperately tried to defend himself. Kaelin's heart pounded like war drums. He felt the weight of the staff in his hands, trying to remember the little training he'd had at the Solar Archive. The attacker lunged with a horizontal strike, but Kaelin ducked and, in a desperate move, mustered his courage and struck the enemy's knee, making him grunt in pain and stumble. As the fight intensified, Kaelin realized that the attackers' movements were organized, almost rehearsed. They weren't just ordinary thieves. They were trained killers. Kaelin took a deep breath, studying the attacker's pattern. The man lunged again, but this time Kaelin ducked and countered with a direct strike to the attacker's legs, bringing him down. With one final push, he disarmed the attacker and held him down, panting and surprised at his own ability. Liara was facing 2 of them with impressive skill, dodging blows and counterattacking with precision. Seizing an opportunity, Liara finished the move with a quick cut, taking one of them down. With only one left, the fight became even more intense. Liara lunged at the remaining attacker, dodging his blows masterfully until she managed to land a clean hit, plunging a blade into his chest, while Kaelin tried to keep the third one on the ground, using his body weight and the staff until Liara finished off the last attacker. In the end, through their combined efforts, they managed to subdue all 3. "Well done, kid," Liara shouted. The bodies of the intruders lay still around the campsite. Liara knelt near one, pulling back the cloth covering the man's face. "They were probably sent to stop us from finding out something," Liara murmured. She pointed to a symbol engraved on the dagger one of them carried, a mark Liara recognized. It was a strange emblem, a serpent coiled around a flaming tower. "I've seen this before," she said thoughtfully. "That's the mark of a mercenary guild called the Iron Shadows. If they're involved, things are even more complicated than we thought. Who exactly wanted to bury the secrets contained in the diary?" Silence returned to the campsite, broken only by the sound of the river in the distance. Liara wiped the blood from her blades and approached Kalen. "These men weren't here by accident. Someone knows what you're carrying, and it's not good." He knew the situation was serious, but at the same time, the attempted attack only reinforced the importance of the diary. Someone was willing to kill them to prevent them from discovering the truth. Kalen felt a chill run down his spine. He hadn't realized his journey would attract so much attention so quickly. "Then we need to be faster," he said, trying to mask his nervousness with determination. "Whatever is in the Aryan Mountains, we can't let them get there first." As the first rays of sunlight hit the forest, they knew they had to keep moving. They left camp and pressed on, being extra careful with every step. Every shadow seemed to be hiding a new danger, and Kalen felt like he was being watched all the time. Still, he held onto that diary like his life depended on it. The next few days were a mad dash. Kalen and Liara were getting farther and farther off the beaten path, taking risky routes to lose anyone following them. At night, they'd set up camp and keep watch. Even though things were tense, their partnership was getting stronger. Liara, with all her experience, started teaching Kalen how to survive in the wild and fight. He was a quick learner, soaking up everything she taught him. Reaching the Aryan Mountains was like stepping into another world. Towering peaks stabbed at the sky, their bases shrouded in a golden mist. The wind howled, its sound a mix of a mournful song and a wild beast's roar. The whole place felt alive and watching them. Liara led the way, guiding them along narrow, treacherous paths carved into the rock by civilizations long gone. As they climbed, they started seeing signs of an ancient civilization. Crumbling temples, broken pillars, and writing in languages even Kalen couldn't decipher. The weight of history was everywhere. Near one of these temples, they found proof of the Guardian rumors. A giant, made of stone and crystal, slowly rose from the ground. It was a golem, a relic from the ages. Its eyes glowed blue, and it was surrounded by a shimmering energy field. "Don't just charge in," Liara warned, pulling Kalen back. The golem wasn't attacking, but it was blocking their path. They'd clearly stumbled into someone's backyard. Then Kalen remembered something from the diary about ancient melodies that awakened the eternal silence. He pulled a small flute from his pack, something he'd brought more for fun than for any practical reason. With a mix of hope and fear, he started playing. The notes echoed through the valley, blending with the wind. The glow in the golem's eyes dimmed, and it relaxed. Slowly, it moved aside, clearing their path. Liara grinned. "You've got more tricks up your sleeve than I thought, Kalen." After hours of grueling ascent, they finally reached the entrance to the lost sanctuary. It was an immense door, crafted from an unknown material that shimmered like liquid gold. Ancient inscriptions covered its surface, but at its center was a perfectly shaped cavity, as if designed to hold a specific artifact. Kalen looked at Liara, uncertain, as she studied the diary. "It's here. The diary mentions a lost artifact that opens this sanctuary." but it doesn't say where it could be. Suddenly, a sound echoed behind them. They turned to see a small group of hooded figures approaching rapidly. Their robes were adorned with ancient symbols, and their weapons seemed to be made of the same lustrous substance as the door. One of them raised a hand, signaling for Kaelin and Liara to halt. "You shouldn't be here," said the leader, his voice deep and filled with authority. "This place is sacred, reserved only for those worthy of facing the truth." A chill ran down Kaelin's spine. He knew this was it. Liara stepped forward, ready to defend them both, but Kaelin took a step forward. "I came seeking the truth," he said, holding up the diary. "If this place is so sacred, it must hold answers the world needs. Please let me enter." The hooded leader stared at him for long seconds before replying. "Your courage is admirable, but the truth is a double-edged sword. You must prove your purity of heart. Only then will you be allowed to cross this threshold." Kaelin felt the weight of the statement. He was about to face a test that would define not only his fate, but the fate of all of Aurathys. And deep down, he knew the revelations within the sanctuary would forever change the world he knew. The atmosphere around the sanctuary shifted as soon as the hooded leader finished speaking. The air grew heavy, charged with energy. Kaelin felt as though the mountain itself was alive, watching his every move. The leader gestured for him and Liara to follow, while the other hooded guardians formed a circle around the entrance, as if they were part of an ancient ritual. Kaelin was nervous, but determined. Liara, at his side, kept her hand near her blade, ready to act if anything went wrong. "What exactly do you mean by prove my purity of heart?" Kaelin asked the leader, trying to hide the tension in his voice. "Everyone who seeks the truth must confront their own deepest fears and desires," the leader replied, without turning around. "The sanctuary is not just a physical place. It is a reflection of the spirit of the seeker. If you are not prepared, it will destroy you." Those words resonated deeply with Kaelin. He didn't know what to expect, but he knew there was no turning back. They reached a chamber before the golden door. The hooded leader turned to him, extending a hand. "The diary. It is the key to your trial." Kaelin hesitated, but handed over the diary. The leader opened it, reciting words in an ancient tongue. The glow on the door's inscriptions intensified, and a deep sound echoed through the mountain, like distant thunder. The door began to open slowly, revealing a blinding light. "Whatever you see inside, it will be your true test," the leader said. "Your companion can wait here. This path is for you alone." Kaelin looked at Liara, who nodded. "If anything goes wrong, I'll be here," she said, her voice filled with worry and trust. With cautious steps, Kaelin entered the sanctuary. As soon as he crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind him, isolating him from the outside world. The first thing Kaelin noticed was the absolute silence. There was no sound at all, just an all-encompassing darkness. Suddenly, the light returned, but not as he expected. He was in a place that seemed familiar yet distorted. It was the great solar archive, the place where he had spent most of his life studying, but the shelves were empty, and the air had an oppressive weight. A voice echoed through the room. "You seek the truth, but are you prepared for the price?" Kaelin spun around, but there was no one there. Instead, images began to appear around him, like memories projected into the air. He saw his father, a stern and rigid man, reprimanding him. He saw fellow students mocking his obsession with ancient stories and artifacts. And most painfully, he saw himself holding his mother's hand in her final moments, promising to do something great with his life. The images vanished, replaced by a new scene. It was Aurathys, but not as he knew it. The city was in ruins, consumed by flames and rubble. People were running in despair, while enormous shadows loomed over them. At the center of it all, Caelan saw himself standing, holding the diary, but unable to act. He heard voices around him, accusing him of being responsible for the destruction. You brought this upon us. Your quest for truth has doomed us. Caelan fell to his knees, his heart heavy. He realized that the true test was not just physical, but emotional. The sanctuary was confronting him with his greatest fears. The fear of failure, of being inadequate, of being responsible for something terrible. Enough, he shouted, his voice echoing through the room. I am not perfect, but my quest is not selfish. I want to save Aurathys. I want to protect its people and its future. If that means facing my fears, so be it. As soon as he finished speaking, the darkness began to dissipate, giving way to a soft glow. A figure appeared before him, formed of pure light. It was difficult to make out its face, but its presence was comforting and powerful. You have faced your doubts and not deviated from your purpose. That is what it means to be worthy of the truth. The figure extended a hand, and a small sphere of light floated towards Caelan. He took it instinctively, feeling a warm sensation spread through his body. This is the fragment of truth. Guard it well, for it will be the key to saving Aurathys. When Caelan emerged from the sanctuary, he felt different, as if he had been carrying an immense weight and at the same time had gained something invaluable. Liara ran to him, examining him. Are you all right? What happened in there? Caelan showed her the sphere of light in his hand. I found the fragment, but this is just the beginning. There's still so much to discover, and the danger seems to be greater than we imagined. The hooded leader approached, watching him intently. You have passed the test, but the path ahead will be even more difficult. The secrets you carry will make you a target. Protect them with your life. Caelan nodded. He knew he was not just carrying a fragment of light, but the hope of a future for Aurathys. Caelan felt the weight of the light fragment in his hand, but also something more, a sense of responsibility and a connection to something greater. The hooded leader watched intently, as if waiting for an additional sign. You have touched the heart of the sanctuary, the leader said reverently. Few survive this trial, but now you carry a fragment of something lost long ago. Tell me, what did you see? Caelan hesitated. He didn't know if he fully trusted this man, but he felt that hiding the truth might be a mistake. I saw Aurathys in ruins, he said, his voice filled with emotion. And I was at the center of it. The sanctuary showed me that my quest could bring both salvation and destruction. But it also gave me this. He extended his hand, showing the glowing sphere. The light within seemed to pulse, as if it had a life of its own. The hooded leader leaned in closer, his face still obscured by the hood. This is proof that you are worthy, he murmured, almost to himself. But know this, carrying the fragment is both a privilege and a curse. It will attract those who wish to use it for dark purposes. Liara, who had been silent until then, stepped forward. And what happens now? Caelan passed the test. What is the next step? The leader turned slowly to her. The next step is his. Each bearer of the fragment must decide how to use it. But Kaelin knows this. The fragments are part of something much greater. There are others scattered across the world, each guarding a piece of the puzzle that can save or destroy Aurathys. Kaelin frowned. You mean there are more like this? Yes, replied the hooded leader. But finding the others will be even more dangerous. The forces you will face will not just be your own fears. There are entities and powers that will do everything to stop you. And if you fail. What happens if he fails? Interrupted Liara, the tension clear in her voice. The leader paused, as if considering whether to reveal the truth. If he fails, Aurathys will be consumed by chaos. The remaining light will be extinguished, and darkness will reign. A heavy silence fell over the group. Kaelin squeezed the sphere of light in his hand, feeling the weight of responsibility increase. He looked at Liara, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. I won't fail, said Kaelin, his voice firm. If there are other fragments, I will find them, no matter what it takes. Tell me, Kaelin, do you know your origins? The hooded man asked, his voice filled with mystery. Kaelin frowned. My origins? What does that have to do with the fragment? The leader remained motionless, but his voice rang out with sharp clarity. Everything. The blood that runs through your veins is the blood of the lost heir. You descend from a forgotten lineage, the keepers of the light. They were the guardians of Aurathys, those who could wield the power of the fragments. But that lineage was betrayed and scattered generations ago. You are the last. Shock was visible on Kaelin's face. That's impossible. My father was a stern man, a soldier. He wanted me to follow in his footsteps, but I chose a different path. After he and my mother died, I was alone, but I never heard anything about a lineage like that until I found this diary. The leader maintained his composure. That is exactly how it was supposed to be. Those who hunted your lineage believed they had exterminated all the heirs. Your parents may not have known the full truth, but they protected you the only way they could, by keeping you away from the military path, where you would be an obvious target. Kaelin squeezed the sphere in his hand, feeling the weight of his words. He looked at Liara, seeking strength. She gave him a small nod of encouragement. I won't fail, he said, his voice firm, and repeated again. If there are other fragments, I will find them. And if I am truly the lost heir, then it is my responsibility to save this world. The leader nodded. Then go. The path ahead will not be easy, but you will not be alone. Remember, the true power of the fragment lies not only in the light it carries, but in the heart of the one who holds it. As Kaelin and Liara descended the mountain, the surroundings seemed different. The shadows seemed deeper, the winds more cutting. But despite this, Kaelin felt strengthened. He knew this was just the first stage of a much larger journey. Do you think we can do this? Liara asked, breaking the silence. Kaelin looked at her and smiled, a smile that hid both determination and uncertainty. I have to. There's no other choice. As they walked away, a figure emerged from the shadows, watching them silently. His face was partially covered, but his eyes gleamed with a mix of interest and malevolence. So, the fragment has been awakened, the figure murmured. Let the game begin. Following other clues in the diary, their journey to Solathur began with a mix of relief and apprehension. Having survived the perils of the Aryan Mountains and acquired the first sphere, Kaelin and Liara realized they couldn't afford to rest for long. The power radiating from the sphere seemed to be alluring in a disturbing way, as if something, or someone, could sense its presence from a distance. As they trekked through a valley of hills bathed in golden light, Kalen felt the weight of responsibility grow on his shoulders. With each step, he pondered the vision of his parents and the enigmatic words of the sanctuary's guardian. Why me? He wondered, glancing at Liara, who walked ahead with her ever-alert posture. The surrounding landscape was both beautiful and treacherous. Crystal leaf trees shimmered under Aurathys' light, but the rugged terrain made the journey difficult. On a particularly silent night, as they camped near a shimmering river, Kalen finally voiced his doubts. "Liara, have you ever questioned your purpose?" he asked as he watched the still stars in the eternal sky. Liara, who was sharpening one of her blades, stopped and looked at him. "Many times, but answers don't always come when we want them. Sometimes, we only discover our purpose when we've already fulfilled it." Kalen pondered this in silence. He wasn't sure if he would find the answers in Solither, but he felt he couldn't give up now. As they neared the region of Solither, the vegetation began to give way to a more desolate terrain. The golden light of the realm seemed less intense there, as if time and oblivion had dimmed its glow. Ruins began to appear as shadows on the horizon, fallen towers and shattered arches that spoke of a glorious past long lost. However, the journey was not peaceful. In a narrow ravine, they were ambushed by bandits. Lured by the apparent riches of Liara and the unusual glow of the sphere, Kalen tried to hide in his bag. The battle was swift but fierce. Liara, with her lethal skill, disarmed two attackers before they could react. Kalen, still inexperienced, managed to knock down another, again with a clumsy swing of his staff. After the confrontation, Liara looked at Kalen with a small smile. "You're learning, kid, but you still need to keep your feet on the ground." Kalen smiled back, feeling a mix of pride and exhaustion. With the danger gone, they continued, now even more cautious. Finally, they reached the ruins of Solither, the destination marked in the diary, where they believed they would find the second sphere, an artifact complementary to the first that Kalen had acquired in the Sanctuary of the Eternal. The place exuded a mysterious aura. Broken statues, covered in golden moss, were scattered everywhere, and ancient symbols adorned the crumbling walls. It was as if the very earth was mourning what had been lost. Liara, observing the surroundings, murmured, "Welcome to Solither, Kalen. Here, past and present meet. Let's see what the shadows have to tell us." Kalen took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his destiny once more. He knew that whatever they found there would be crucial to his mission, and perhaps to the future of Aurathys. Unlike the serene sanctuary where the first sphere was guarded, the ruins of Solither were a chaos of broken structures and a chaotic magic in the air. At the heart of the ruins, they found what remained of a great hall. There, an ancient circular platform was adorned with arcane symbols that Kalen vaguely recognized from the diary. In the center, a floating sphere of light pulsed in shades of gold and blue, emitting a low, constant sound like a whisper of time. Before they could get closer, a voice echoed through the hall. It was deep and reverberating, charged with authority and malevolence. From the darkness emerged an imposing figure. He wore black armor decorated with red runes, and his eyes glowed like burning coals. He looked like a herald of destruction. "You've come a long way, Kalen. Farther than I expected," said the figure in black armor, his voice as cold as ice. but you shouldn't have meddled in the affairs of the gods. Kalen tightened his grip around the staff he carried. Who are you? The figure smiled, but it was a smile devoid of warmth. I am Taranth, servant of the ancient powers that your people betrayed. And you, Kalen, are the last link of a lineage that should have been extinguished long ago. Liara stood beside Kalen, her blades ready. So, that's it. All this effort to eliminate a young man who didn't even know of his heritage. Taranth raised a hand, and the sphere of light began to pulse faster. Do not underestimate what is at stake here, woman. Kalen carries the blood of the Altarans. He must not survive. Kalen felt a wave of panic, but also a growing determination. He was the heir to an ancient and forgotten legacy, and his role in this story was greater than he had ever imagined. The battle began brutally. Taranth summoned creatures from the shadows, distorted shapes that attacked with fury. Liara, with her dexterity, kept several of them occupied, while Kalen tried to find a way to access the sphere without being stopped. The barrier around the sphere seemed to pulse in sync with Taranth's attacks, as if he were connected to it. Kalen, the sphere. Liara shouted, blocking one of the creatures, while another tried to attack her from behind. Kalen rushed towards the platform, dodging attacks as he felt the energy of the first sphere in his staff react more and more intensely. When he reached the edge of the barrier, he raised his staff, and a beam of golden light shot out of it, colliding with the dark barrier. The impact was immense, and Kalen felt a wave of energy wash over him. Suddenly, he was transported to a vision. He was standing before a vast abyss of light and shadow, where two gigantic figures, one of pure light and the other of absolute darkness, seemed to be in eternal balance. A voice echoed in his mind, "Choose wisely, heir of the Althians." The second sphere not only complements the power of the first, but also defines the path that will be taken. Light and darkness coexist, but it is up to you to decide which one will guide Aurathys. Back in the hall, Kalen opened his eyes, feeling a new strength within him. He knew what he needed to do. Facing Taranth, he raised his hand, and the sphere began to glow intensely, expelling the shadows from the hall. "You've gone further than I expected, Kalen," he declared, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But don't you think it's time to give up? You don't even understand the weight of what you're carrying." Kalen raised his staff, feeling the energy of the first sphere vibrate in his bag, in response to the presence of the second. "You don't understand what's at stake. These spheres can save Aurathys, and I won't let them fall into the hands of a servant of darkness." Taranth laughed, a sound that echoed like thunder in the ruins. "Save Aurathys? You still believe that's possible? The power of these spheres is greater than any mortal can comprehend. They belong to the ancient gods, and you're nothing but a boy playing with forces you don't understand." Liara stepped forward, her blades in her hands gleaming with determination. "And you're nothing but a pawn trying to free masters who would destroy you without a second thought." Taranth raised his hand, and new shadows began to emerge from the ground, taking on grotesque forms that surrounded the two. "You have no idea what you're facing, and I will make sure that this is your last lesson." Taranth controlled the shadows with terrifying precision, while Kalen and Liara fought for survival. Kalen knew what he needed to do. Channeling the power of the first sphere, he intensified the light until the barrier around the second sphere disintegrated. Taranth roared in frustration. "You don't understand. This power is not yours to take. Kaelin ignored the enemy's words, focusing on connecting the two spheres. When the second sphere reacted to the first, an explosion of energy engulfed the hall. The shadow creatures were dissipated, and Taranth was thrown against the wall, screaming as the light consumed his strength. "You don't know what you're doing. This doesn't end here." With a final effort, Kaelin channeled the sphere's energy to seal Taranth's power. The hall trembled, and the platform collapsed around them. Liara pulled Kaelin out before everything collapsed completely. When they were finally at a safe distance, they both turned to see the ruins fall silent, as if a weight had been lifted from the world. Kaelin turned to Liara, who was panting but unharmed. "This isn't over yet. It was just the beginning. If there are others like Taranth, we need to stop them," he said, holding the two spheres now balanced in his hands. Liara smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We took the first step to reclaim Aurathys, and you won't be alone." As the dust settled, Kaelin realized his journey was far from over. He now carried the weight of his lineage and the responsibility of protecting Aurathys from an evil he had barely begun to understand. As they left the ruins, Kaelin knew that this was just the beginning of a much larger struggle. The spheres were now united, but the fate of Aurathys still hung by a thread, and Taranth certainly wouldn't be the last obstacle in his path. So, Kaelin's adventure in Solithar wraps up, but his journey is just getting started. The fate of Aurathys hangs in the balance, tied to the mysterious spheres and the secrets they hold, secrets that could change everything. Want to know what happens next? Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single moment of this epic quest. What will Kaelin and Liara find in the next ruins? Who will they meet along the way? And what's Kaelin's true destiny as the heir of the House of Alteran? Leave a comment below with your theories, and let's discuss the future of Aurathys together.